Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Hogarth's Global Astrology. Know your planets, know yourself, or know your nation, know yourself. The two are interchangeable. Now, you will see tonight, you'll see I have a special guest with me tonight, and I'm really honored that that Karin asked me to do a little collab with her. So this is Karin from Little Blue Lotus Astrology. Did I get that right?
Exactly. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Perfect, perfect. Little Blue Lotus Astrology. And Karin is a Western astrologer. And tonight we're going to be primarily talking about purpose, how you identify purpose in a chart. And maybe the last 15, 20 minutes of the show, we'll get to current events, etc. As we know, there is so much going on. So, Karin, if you wouldn't mind just giving the audience, those who may not have seen you before, just let us know a little bit about your background and how you got into Western astrology.
Okay. Well, I got into Western astrology the way a lot of us grow spiritually. We're having a crisis in our life somehow, and that pushes us to stretch the boundaries and to learn more. And so I was going through a crisis in my life in my 30s and feeling kind of lost. And a good friend of mine said, "Look, my friend's sister does astrological readings. She's also a great palmist, but she's very positive. She's very encouraging. She's very gentle. I think you need to go and get a reading," because I really didn't know what I was going to be doing in the middle of this storm in my life at that time. So I went to see her, and I couldn't believe what she was telling me. How did she know this stuff?
Wow.
And I kept saying, "My friend told you about me." She said, "No, actually, your friend doesn't really like me very much. We don't talk." The brother and my friend were friends, but not the reader and my friend. So anyway, she said, "No, no, she hasn't said anything about you." And so I kept going back because I needed a lot of guidance. I was going through a lot, as I said, and every time I was just amazed at how helpful she was, how helpful the chart was. And then it got to the point where I wasn't asking, how does she do this? I was asking, I want to do this.
Right.
And so she started teaching me. And it turned out that I'd been an astrologer in other lifetimes. And I wanted to hurry it along. I would look at a chart and I would see energies, Hogarth, behind the planets, shadows moving and things. And I remember complaining to her because it was frustrating for me. I didn't know what that meant. What is that? And I called and I said, "Look, this is what I'm seeing. And I don't know what that means. And it's like, I can almost see it, but I can't quite see it." And she's like, "Karin, you've been doing this for 6 months. I have students that can't name all 12 signs of the zodiac. So don't get frustrated. You're doing fine." So, and I was so lucky, Hogarth, because as soon as I told family and friends that I was going to learn astrology, everybody wanted the chart done.
Wow.
I didn't know. I don't know how to do a chart. No, you have to do my chart. So I always had anywhere between 3 and 6 charts that I was working on while I was taking the classes and and the tutoring and stuff. So I was seeing in real time, oh, this is what makes this person so angry. This is what makes this person so fearful. I could see it in the chart. So it was a beautiful learning experience for me. I worked at Crate and Barrel Furniture for a number of years, and I was not a good furniture salesman. So the staff was always helping me out of a jam. And finally, and I felt bad about it. And finally, I said to one of them, I said, "Look, I feel bad that you guys are always helping me out. I could do this. If that would be helpful to you, I can offer you this." Well, out of a staff of 25 people, I had 23 people lined up to have their charts read.
Wow.
So again, I had this laboratory for almost 7 years of people charts, and they'd come in and say things to me about what's going on in their life, and you have to look at my chart. So it was just great. It was great fun, and it was a great experience. So now I've always wanted to look at the spiritual side of someone's chart. I always wanted to look at things that were behind what the chart said, like, when is it a good time to change jobs, or when is it a good time or a bad time to get pregnant or get married. And I thought there's something else here. And I started changing how I read the charts in the 90s until finally I just completely leaned in after COVID and said, this is how I read a chart. I'm going to look at the chart and I'm going to look at the arc of your life, why you're here, what's making things difficult for you, and finding things in the chart that will show me those things. It seems that that's what people are needing right now. I'm getting, all my clients are wanting that.
Yeah.
Besides when to change jobs and when to get married, but they really want to know that kind of information.
Indeed, indeed. And what you just described is, because there's quite a few astrologers that say this, and I believe it to be true, that astrology chooses you. Really does. It really does. It really does choose people. And it's a kind of alchemy. Astrology is like a combination of science, of course, because we look at, astronomy as well. We want to have a decent amount of astronomy in there, particularly Vedic astrology as well, is sidereal, follows where the planets are astronomically. So there is that science background. Really, astrology can be viewed really as the grandmother of modern science. It was there before everything. The movement of the stars, humanity has long understood that there are these archetypes, these correlations, but it's also an art, and it is also an intuition. It's also right brain and left brain. You have to use both in astrology. And for me, you're talking about seeing the spirituality in people's charts. I often say to my clients, when I'm looking at a chart, it's like looking at a sheet of music crossed between a Rubik's cube as well. So when I look at charts, I find certain planets in certain signs and certain houses in certain combinations will sing certain songs.
Yeah.
The melody will vary from person to person, but the tune will be recognizable. And the way I break down charts is that I always saying that planets are people. So when I look at specific planets in people's charts, it will tell me about their mother, their father, their brother, their work colleagues, their sister, all of this kind of stuff. So it's fascinating. But the way you learn is the best way to learn. One of the best ways to learn astrology is to do it, is to read charts, and then you see what those patterns are. So you really learn the best way. So how did you identify purpose in a chart? And from that Western astrology perspective, what are the key things that you look for when you're identifying purpose?
Okay, well, I look at the nodes, of course. I look at the north and south nodes. I look at the midheaven differently than a lot of other astrologers look at the midheaven. I look at the midheaven, and this is something that I've kind of developed intuitively over the last few years as the dharma of the person. And a lot of Westerners understand dharma to mean responsibility, or karmic responsibility, or karma. But there's another layer to the definition of karma, which is that thing that you are, that if you're not that thing, you're not you. The sun can't be the sun if it's not shining or giving heat or giving light. And so I look at that whatever's on the midheaven, there might be a planet there, but there's always a zodiacal sign there. And I look at the bottom and I say, well, this is where they're coming from. And this is where they're aspiring to. But the thing they're aspiring to, they already have in them. They just maybe haven't recognized it. Maybe they haven't unpeeled it. And then when I say that to my clients and I tell them that specific thing, they're like, oh, there's a recognition there. But the nodes are very important. The midheaven is important. Chiron is very important.
Yes.
Chiron is very important. And often I'll see a past life pattern too in the chart.
Sure. So for those that may not know, because obviously we're two astrologers talking to each other, and we both know what a midheaven is. So just correct me if I say anything wrong, but when Karin is talking about the midheaven, we're talking about the highest point in the chart, which is normally around the 10th house or the 10th house cusp. So it being the higher part of the chart, it can literally talk about a person's higher purpose and their dharma. Just to contribute, that dharma can also be like interpreted as the right way, the correct path for the soul. So when you look at planets there, how does that influence your interpretation of that, Karin?
Okay, so let's say this person has Aries at the bottom of the chart, and often they come from a family that fights a lot, or even a military family. And in both cases, those people, that family isn't very nurturing. They're not very sensitive to other people's emotions. They're not very diplomatic. They're not very compromising. And so this person is moving from an Aries base. They're familiar with fighting and maybe even cruelty. Sometimes Aries can be cruel, but they're moving towards Libra, which is peace and beauty and tranquility and balance. And it's like, this is what your soul is yearning for. You're trying to escape this basis. You can fight for what you need and what you want as long as it's the right cause. But what you're reaching toward is the part of your soul that can manufacture and produce peace and beauty and compromise.
So you're talking about, just to clarify, so when Karin says the bottom of the chart, she's really talking about the Inam Koli, isn't it? The fourth house, which is always opposite the 10th.
Right.
So the 10th is how we're very much projecting ourselves into the world. But the fourth house will talk very much about our inner world, our home life, and it's associated with the mother, isn't it? And the family.
Right.
So, of course, like you said, if the fourth house falls under Aries, then there's a higher chance that there would be warlike elements, martial elements.
Yes, exactly. If you had Capricorn at the base, then you're coming maybe from a family that's very cold, very structured, very rule-oriented, maybe very ambitious, achievement-oriented. But what you're looking for is that Cancer at the top of the chart, which is nurturing. It's the divine mother energy. It's emotional and sensitive and nurturing. And so I find that that's a big indicator of what a person is trying to find with their purpose. And I don't think a lot of other astrologers are doing that.
Right. Now, you mentioned Chiron. Now, I am a Neo-Vedic astrologer, so just to explain, the audience knows, but just to explain to you, Karin. So in traditional Vedic astrology, they do not count the outer planets. So they go up to Saturn. So it's Sun, Mercury, Moon, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and then Rahu and Ketu. Yeah, so they look at, and Rahu is the north node of the moon, Ketu is the south node of the moon. So they look at 9 factors. But I include Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto because they're too important to leave out. And I also include Chiron and Ceres in there. And I find Chiron reveals so much, but I'm just curious, how do you relate to Chiron, and what does Chiron symbolize for you in a person's chart?
Chiron, I think Chiron is vital to look at. I remember when I had a mentor in the 90s, because I think it was discovered in like late 80s, 87 or something, Chiron. And so in the mid 90s, I had a mentor that said, you need to be looking at Chiron in the chart. Here's a book you can get and, start tracking that in your chart as well as in other people's charts. So of course I did my own first, just to test it to see, does this really have any validity, or is she just blowing smoke, And I looked at it in my chart and it was like, oh my God, it explained so much pain that I had in a specific area in my childhood. And that kind of came around again, as an adult once or twice. And it's like, this is the trigger. This is the pain. But however, there's also talents and skills that are involved when you figure out what the Chiron is and maybe how it affects other planets in your chart. And it brings all these gifts to you. And it explains so much about our struggle and the past. I keep seeing things, and I look at past patterns when I see things. They just come. And so I see the patterns and I'm like, okay, well, if you had a past life where your mother locked you in your house and you never got to go out, and all you had was people coming to get readings from you, then you're going to have fear talking to other people. You're going to have a lot of fear going outside of the house and going into the neighborhood and standing in front of other people to talk or perform. And so, but it aspects other planets in the chart that says, but if you do, you can help this person, you can do this person, you can inspire this person. So Chiron triggers a lot of past life information for me when I look at the chart, and it all kind of works together, Hogarth. I'm sure it does that for you as well. There's like one key thing, but all the other elements kind of feed into that one key thing. And Chiron helps like that a lot.
Perfect. I will just bring in some of our audience who are joining us tonight. So there's over 200 of you so far. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. Much appreciated. I will put the link to Karin's Karin's YouTube. I put the link in our YouTube, so please, of course, be sure to like and subscribe to Karin if you find our conversation interesting. And likewise, if you're new to my channel as well, feel free to like and subscribe. It can go both ways. So this is just a little bit of feedback here. So Brenda says, looking forward to this. I appreciate you guys. Regina said, I would love to learn how to do this professionally, but it seems so confusing and I can never remember everything. Yeah, it does take quite a bit of memory, astrology, but you can get there if you keep going. That's Angela Locke, sorry, saying yay. Beautiful Butterfly says, hello, Hogarth and Karin. Really excited about you both being here. Love and light. Angela says, nice to see a new collab. Good Saturday morning, good folks, says Janelle. Elizabeth is saying, hello, lovely folks. What else do we have here? Will Hogarth give dating advice? Well, I would I'll dive in with a little bit of dating advice, depending on what a person's preference is. But in Vedic astrology, basically, planet Jupiter, I don't know if you may use the same significance in your chart, Karin, but in a woman's chart, so Jupiter represents the significant men in our life. And in Vedic astrology, it is secondary characteristics of the father. Yeah, the sun is the main one, but Jupiter is the secondary characteristics. Can also be a very virtuous son or brother as well. But the main interpretation in Vedic astrology is that Jupiter is the husband, the romantic interest. Okay. So, for example, if I'm looking at a woman's chart and assuming, say, she's interested in dating a male or marrying a man, because obviously you have same-sex relationships and all in between, and all I have to do is look at her Jupiter. It will tell me everything.
Wow.
Planet Mars is boyfriends. So you need to look at Mars as well. Jupiter and Mars will talk about the significant men in one's life. So for example, in terms of with dating, and she said she had a little sad face there. So I'll tell you something there in connecting back with Chiron. If Chiron and Jupiter are together, now Chiron is what? The wounded healer. Mm-hmm. So as Karin said, it can show, I always, whenever I look at it, it can show where we've received a wound in life. Could be mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, or financial. Mm-hmm. But it can also show where we can potentially heal. But if Chiron is with Jupiter, it can often mean wounds come from the husband.
Wow.
I've seen it time and time again. So when I'm talking about looking at planets making music,
Mm-hmm.
when I see Chiron with Jupiter, aha, I've got a clue
Mm-hmm.
straight away. So remember though, wherever Chiron is, even with planets where it might be causing a problem, it can also show healing in that area. So Jupiter is also what? The planet of knowledge, wisdom. So when a person basically educates themselves, when they learn about what inspires them, they can then transcend that wounding as well. So what are
Mm-hmm.
your thoughts on that as well, just to continue the Chiron theme?
Well, that's fascinating. I don't know a lot about Vedic astrology. I had a Vedic reading many, many years ago, and I was really impressed with the reader as well as the system. But it's a very complex system, and I didn't have a teacher handy to try to learn Vedic astrology, and I think it's tough to learn that from a book.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I didn't learn it, but yeah, I see that Chiron in the chart. I look at the first thing I do is I look at the sign and the house it's in, and then I look at whether it's aspecting any of the other planets in the chart.
Of course.
So, for instance, I worked with a client who was a beautiful African American woman, and she had Chiron in the ninth house. And I can't remember what else was in the chart, but I remember looking at the chart and she asked me, well, what else do you see about the wound for me? And I said, you were taken as an indigenous woman, you were taken from your home to live in Europe and you couldn't survive. You just
Wow.
withered up and died. And she just started crying and said, yep, that feels about right. So sometimes you can just tell from the house that it's in and the sign that it's in, but often the way it's interacting with other planets, as you mentioned, the song of the chart, here's the wound, here's what made this person feel very different as a child.
Oh, yeah.
But then they grow into their uniqueness and they're proud of their uniqueness, and they can be a role model for other people that feel like they don't fit in. It
Yeah.
helps to explain things that helps the person realize, oh, this is why I'm more interested in ancient Egypt than I am in my own American culture, kind of thing.
Oh, you've just reminded me something. I'll just bring in a few more comments here. Susan says it's a language.
Language.
Absolutely. Really is. Barb says, love you both for your clarity and logic, speaking astrologically. And then Beautiful Butterfly says, I'm subscribed to Karin's channel.
Oh,
So
hi,
that is
beautiful
good.
butterfly. Yeah.
Indeed. And we've got greetings here from Tennessee. So that's so
Cool.
nice. Many of you are joining in. So before I forget, oh, crikey, have I already forgotten it already? You were just saying, oh, crikey, oh, I had a thought. What did you just say again? You just mentioned.
Chiron aspecting other planets in the chart, helping
Yes.
to explain.
Oh, and you were talking about past lives. Oh,
Yeah.
crikey, what was I gonna say? Oh, that's it. I've just remembered.
Okay.
So whenever I see Chiron in the first house, whenever I see now the first house, everyone represents you, your identity. It's the rising sign. It's the first impressions. It's how we come across it. It represents the body. And also in Vedic astrology, it represents the top of the head, but it really is emblematic of the identity. So whenever I see, without fail, Chiron in the first house, that person has suffered either some kind of physical wound, spiritual wound, mental wound, or financial wound in their life, or they were often bullied. So because like Chiron will always show that wound that we receive. So they're often very shy, or they were bullied. For actually quite a few of my clients, without naming names, but some of them actually had to have terminations as well when they were younger. Yeah. Because Chiron can talk about receiving a wound to the body, or sometimes they have an accident. Maybe they fall out of a tree, or they had a car crash or something like that.
Right.
It's very, very interesting. But that Chiron wound, when they lean into it and when they develop it and when they grow it, it always gives these spiritual gifts, these insights. It will always teach us something unique, isn't it? And how we can heal ourselves and heal others. So I find that fascinating. So what else do you look for in terms of purpose in a chart?
I look at the nodes for sure. I definitely look at the north and south node. And again, I always use myself as an example when I'm starting to learn about something, because I want to test the validity of what I'm trying to incorporate into the reading or into my the way I look at the chart. So I learned about the north nodes, and it took me so long, Hogarth, to figure out what my north node was finally about. And finally, in my late 40s, a teacher I had very casually said what my north node meant. And I was like, I was dumbstruck. I've been struggling with this for decades. And he just like casually threw this comment away, and it was like, oh my God. Yep, that is what I've been doing my whole life. And it kind of, again, it's one of those aha moments where everything else in the chart kind of falls into place, and the puzzle gets so much clearer and so much more complete. So looking at the nodes is so very important. But usually, and I'm sure you have found this, maybe I should ask you if you have found this, that, it's sort of all works together. If someone has Chiron in the first, as you said, maybe they've had an accident, maybe they had a near-death experience when they were a kid. Maybe they've had their identity stripped. They were never allowed to be who they were because they were bullied, or the family was very oppressive. And so then you wonder, well, where, maybe the north node might be in the third house of brothers and sisters and being able to communicate. So all of these things kind of fall into place, I find.
Yeah, indeed. In likewise as well, in Vedic astrology, a great deal of emphasis is put on the nodes of the moon. And I often say to my clients, but this is also believed in Vedic astrology, the nodes of the moon are the hardest to understand. They are the most mysterious points in the chart. So in Vedic astrology, they are described as the outcasts, the rebels. And Rahu and Ketu, north and south node of the moon, they are considered otherworldly, but that otherworldliness expresses differently between them. So basically, what is the mythology around it? Essentially, Rahu and Ketu, is often referred to as the dragon, used to be one entity, which was called Swabhanu. Swabhanu stole the liquid of immortality by disguising himself between the sun and the moon. And Vishnu, who is seen as the god particle, really, was disguised as the beautiful goddess Mohini. And she was dishing out this thing called Amrita, which was this liquid of immortality, to the demons and the devas, who were the planets. Anyway, so he disguised himself as one of the devas and was able to steal a sip of the liquid. No sooner as he drank the liquid, the sun and the moon informed on him and said, Vishnu, Vishnu, this isn't a god, this is a demon. Vishnu transformed himself from the beautiful Mohini into his fierce form, which is Shiva, and he threw his disc and cut off the head of Swabhanu.
Okay.
Right. But it was too late. The liquid of immortality had reached the body, so it couldn't die. And the head became Rahu, the head of the dragon, and the body became Ketu, the body of the dragon without the head. And they've said since that point, Rahu and Ketu have always wanted to take their revenge on the sun and the moon. And the way they do that is by causing the eclipses. Yeah, because that's what they do. So Rahu and Ketu are what I consider the manifest points of fate and destiny in a person's chart.
Okay.
Ketu will always speak about the past. It's our past lives, but it's everything that we may have mastered, but we're kind of bored with that skill. We're tired with it. I always say Ketu is the been there, done that, been through the gift shop.
Right.
K2 is an introverted energy, and it is a critical energy. So whenever you see K2 with a planet, whatever that planet represents, there'll be scrutiny or dissatisfaction with that. So K2 with Jupiter, for example, can show issues again with the husband. The husband can be very draining.
Right.
Yeah. Or
Right.
if it's with the sun, which represents the father, sometimes the father is absent. If it's with the moon, the mother can be a little bit blah.
Yeah.
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 But Rahu will show the direction in life, ideally, that we're supposed to go in. But it's always scary to follow Rahu because Ketu is the tower, Rahu is the jungle. So Rahu will show where we need to go, but it's like, oh, we get the collywobbles there because to go into to self-actualize, we need to take risks. Rahu is an extroverted energy, otherworldly, but strange. So he also deals with liars, cheats, hoodlums, scandalous people, but he's never boring. Never boring. He's always bringing up something exotic, something new. Rahu loves fame. He deals with addictions, alcohol, all of this kind of stuff.
Wow.
So the north node of the moon is very powerful. And in Vedic astrology, we also have something called a dasha system. Too long to explain, but it's when a planetary energy is dominant. And at the moment, the United States is in its Rahu dasha, according to Vedic astrology, which means America's fate and destiny is being dominated by Rahu right now. And Rahu is what? Liars, cheats, scoundrels, drink, drug abuse. It also associated with politics. Rahu is also politics. So I thought I would just drop that little bit there for you. But in your readings, when you look at the north and south node of the moon, what do they speak to you?
Well, the north node is the highest spiritual good. And so the south node is patterns that keep us kind of enslaved in an old way of being. And spirit is like, you've done that too many times. You know what? Now you've got to go this way. And this way is, as you mentioned, unfamiliar, scary. A woman that might have the north node in the fifth house. Sometimes I can see indications in the chart where this person has come in from a number of lifetimes as a different gender. Well, now they've come in and it's like they want to be a mom. And as you know, the karma is in the cells of our body. And so we come in with a new desire and our cellular structure is like, what? What does she want us to do now? We don't know how to do that. So it's always going to be something that's difficult and very effortful. But when we put our efforts in that direction, the rewards are fantastic. The rewards are great. It's like I like to say, it's like I could have had a V8 if I'd done it this way. So there's much more spiritual good done when you're looking at the new and the terrifying in one specific area of the life, because you're trying to forge a new path. And spirit is saying, hey, we're with you. We're not going to let you do it by yourself, but you kind of have to make a start. And every time you fall back on the south node, and if you've got planets there, then that even, that's even weightier. It's like, well, now I've got, other planets connected to the south node. So I'm used to relationships being like this, or I'm used to my jobs being like this. But the north node is asking me to do something completely new and different. And if I can get up the courage to do it, if I can figure it out, hey, I'm on the mountaintop now.
Absolutely. And I would agree. And in Vedic astrology, we do look a lot at Ketu as well, because Ketu is known as the moksha karka. So moksha means liberation from this world. But Ketu, because Ketu is like a little whirlpool in the chart. It's like a little black hole. But it can show absolutely where we can get stuck, where we can get obsessive about like Ketu is literally kind of very anally retentive. and quite neurotic. It's quite a neurotic energy.
Okay.
So it's when it's associated with other planets, we can be a bit neurotic or a bit controlling, or like you said, always wanting to stay in our comfort zone, because K2 represents the tower, and it also represents the flag in Vedic astrology, which means
Oh.
conquered land.
Oh.
So it's our safe zone. We don't want to leave that castle. We can be a bit controlling there, or we don't want to change there. Whereas Rahu, which is extrovert, otherworldly, but extrovert, always bringing us something exotic, something new. But of course, change is scary. However, when we lean into our Rahu and Ketu, it can give, when we lead into our Rahu, it can be extraordinary, and it will always give us something that we weren't expecting. And I wanted to check in with you. Did you know that there are maturation ages for the planets? Do you look at that in Western, or is
Yeah,
that a new
I do.
concept for you?
No, I do that. I do that. You mean like the planetary returns?
Well, yeah, well, the returns, but in Vedic astrology, we actually say when a person reaches a certain age, chronological age, that planet in their chart matures. It kind of
Oh, I
settles down.
see. Okay.
Yeah. And
Okay.
because it was very interesting what you were saying to me when you were saying in your late 40s, that's when you really began to understand the nodes of the moon. And I just thought, aha, that was what I was supposed to tell you.
Okay.
So in Vedic astrology, so the nodes of the moon, they mature last. Yeah, the first one to mature is Jupiter, matures at age 16. Jupiter also represents children, and I often say this is very often why you see a lot of teen pregnancies around 15, 16.
Interesting.
Jupiter matures. It's the planet of children. Yeah, it's extraordinary how often that happens. Then you would have who matures next? Oh, crikey. It's they say the sun matures at 21, but some say 50. Then you've got the moon, which is around about 23 years old, Venus 24 years old, 25, Mercury, no, then Mars 27. So Mars can be a problematic planet when it matures. Have you heard of the 27 Club?
Yeah? Yes.
So Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, etc. Mars matures around 27, 28.
Wow.
So that can be a tricky time for us here on Earth School. Anyway, then you've got the other ones. Mercury matures, I think, when does Mercury mature? I think it's 32. Saturn matures around about 36, but the nodes of the moon, Rahu matures at 42.
Wow.
K2 matures at 48. So when you're talking about learning, fully understanding the nodes of your moon, it really coincided with your K2 maturing. I just wanted to give you that.
Wow. That's fascinating. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And in Western astrology, around 27 is when we have our first Saturn return. So it's interesting. You put the Saturn return with the Mars maturing, and it'll always bring things happening into the person's life. I had a good friend who lived at home. He was really close with his mom, not so close with his dad, and his mom was fighting cancer, and she passed when he was 27. And it was like, okay, now I can't be mama's boy anymore. I have to figure out who I am and get a job and leave the house. And I had my son at 27. So that was that added responsibility of, okay, I can't be goofy anymore. I have to be an adult because I have a baby now. So that's very interesting. That's at the same time that the Mars is maturing.
Yeah, and thanks for making that comparison, because I hadn't quite joined the dots together myself on that one. And because that 27, 28, that it may as well be a law of physics, but once we hit 27, 28, we always have to deal with maturing. And I do a lot of meditation on the planets and stuff like that. And I remember a couple of years ago, I was doing a deep meditation on Saturn, and Saturn came through to me, and he said, childhood ends when I return. So I was like, oh,
there
I was
you
like,
go.
that means we're children until we're like 27, 28.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have another layer when we're in our late 50s, late
Yes.
50s, 30s, 60s. Saturn comes around for the second time. By the time he's come around for the third time, we're like, take me, I'm done. You know,
I'm
we're like
done.
89, 90 by that point. So it's like, But what
So,
you said, sorry,
okay.
go on.
Is there something that happens in Vedic astrology around the second Saturn return?
Well, for me, like when I see the second Saturn return, I say for me, it is the most important time in a person's life, especially for women. This is what
Okay.
I found. It is huge for women 58, 59, 60. I consider one of the most important times in her life
Mm-hmm.
because it's very often when a woman will enter her, what I call her wise woman phase.
Okay.
This is now, I think the word crone should be reclaimed. It's
Mhm.
often used as a slur and all of this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
which I feel is unfortunate. It should be reclaimed because this age, particularly in a woman's life, can often be where she's at her most majestic,
Mm-hmm.
most knowledgeable, most powerful, wisest. Yes, of course, there are the physical changes, you know, the change, of course, we
Mm-hmm.
know about
Yeah.
that. But this is often a time, if we think of the common timelines, this is often a time when the kids are mature and no
Right.
longer under the, you know, the apron string so much. They've gained so much experience by this point. And the frustration for me, this can often be a time when society chooses to ignore women when they're coming into their best.
Yeah.
So what are you're nodding there, Karin. So what are your thoughts on that, on this maturation, this wise woman time?
Well, I think what the second Saturn return will mean for a lot of women is it's a time of evaluation. Well, what have I been doing for the last 25 to 30 years?
Mm,
Is it who I am? And very often it's not. So they're going through a period with the second Saturn return of discarding the masks maybe that they've worn up to that time in their life. Um, maybe a job, maybe a relationship, maybe a marriage, but they have to figure out who they are without the other labels, without the other masks of mother, wife, secretary, whatever it is that they've been doing for the last 25 years between the first Saturn return and this one. And so it's a looking clearly, it's a 2-year period of time where they're looking clearly at not at the past in a failure kind of way, like, oh, I should have done this or I shouldn't have done that, but just seeing what helped you, what didn't help you, and being more clear-eyed about it and more unemotional about it, not judgmental, to say, okay, this is something I can put away for now. I can heal it and
yeah.
put it away, uh, send it out to the universe however you want to do that. Change homes, change marriage, change what you're doing with your primary energy. Find out who you were to begin with, and has that served you? And now you have a
Wow.
chance to make some decisions about how to move forward until we get
Perfect.
to that third Saturn return and we're like, all right, we're done now.
Yeah. So in a way, kind of in it kind of expands on that theme of purpose in a way, isn't it? It's like
Yes.
that second Saturn return gives
Hmm.
that clarity, but also that detachment and that perspective, because that is considered one of the virtues of Saturn. Even though he's known as a first-rate malefic, Saturn gets too much bad press at times.
Hmm.
But in his majestic form, he is the wizard. He is the sorceress. He gives us distance and perspective, the perspective that can only come with time. And just for some feedback from the audience here, Elizabeth says, this thing about age 27 really hits me. When I turned 27, I had the strongest feelings that I had waited all my life for that age. Wow. Someone here, Barb says 59 now. So yes, Barb, you are slap bang in your second Saturn return. reflections on life. And here's already some reflection here. Kathy Beth says, I gave up drinking and men in that order.
She sounds happier.
Indeed, indeed.
Sounds happier.
So we've got about 15 minutes left. Can you believe how quickly
that was fast.
It goes super fast. So we're going to look a bit at contemporary events, but just to kind of just go over what we were talking about. So when you're looking at purpose in the chart, you look at Chiron, you look at the midhaven, which is the 10th house, cusp, pretty much. You look at the 4th house, which is opposite, to establish what's going on within that person. You also look at the nodes of the moon, north and south node, to see where they are, where a person is growing, etc. But you're also saying in a way that the second Saturn return can add clarity to that whole journey. Would you say that's about right?
I would agree with that. The only other thing I would add about the second Saturn return is that often Saturn will isolate us.
Yes.
Right? It'll isolate us. And so for us humans, that tends to make us feel lonely and sometimes depressed. And so when someone comes to me and says, I feel stuck, I haven't been able to get anything done, I feel kind of depressed, I feel like nobody recognizes me, I can't talk to anybody really, I just want to be by myself, and it bothers them, and I'm able to look in the chart and go, oh, look, you're having a Saturn return. You're supposed to be alone. You're supposed to, as you might think, Hogarth, the Eastern way of, to go into the cave. To go into the cave and meditate. You can't do that if you've got a big, heavy social life and a demanding career. You have to evaluate, and you have to be quiet and, undistracted to do that. So when somebody sees, oh, I shouldn't be feeling lonely, I should be using this time, and this is what I do with this, then again, back to purpose. Now I have something I can be productive with this time.
Fascinating, fascinating. In Vedic astrology, we often refer to Saturn as the planet of greatness. Not in that more extroverted sense, because the sun deals with greatness as well, but that's more like, your fame and leadership, being the king or the queen. Saturn talks about the quiet greatness that comes from within, that comes from solitude. This is why I often associate the Hermit card with Saturn as well. And in Vedic astrology, we also have a terminology which is called Sadi Sati. Now, it sounds a bit dramatic. It refers to 7 years of trials, but what it means is, and it doesn't mean it's always that bad, but it's when Saturn is one sign from the moon. With the moon is when it's most intense, and one sign after the moon. So that's something as well, like you can look at as well when, of course, when you're with your clients and you're looking at the transit of Saturn, take a look to see how close Saturn is to their natal moon, transiting Saturn to the natal moon, because if it's with the moon, then they are feeling that even more, because the moon is what? Our comfort zones, our family, our connections. And Saturn comes in, like you said, and wants to squash and isolate and put pressure and be like, Saturn says, well, what do you truly need? Do you really need this person in your life? Are you still the same person that you were? And that, of course, can be challenging for people. But when they come through it, they're like, wow, I really needed that experience. So,
Yes.
Fascinating. All right. So are you ready to talk a little bit in these dying minutes of the show about current affairs?
Absolutely.
All right. So now you, of course, you are an American, and I want you to lead the floor on this in terms of what you may have observed with your astrology. But how are you feeling about the United States right now? And of course, Trump, who everyone knows I refer to as Duck L'Orange. But how are you feeling about things as an American and as an astrologer?
As an American, I am very upset. I am very angry. I'm very, I want to cry a lot. I want to kick things. But without the astrology, I probably would be a maniac, because I can see in the I could see in the United States chart what's going on. I can see in Trump's chart what's going on, but mainly the United States chart is giving me reason to hope, because of
Good.
the aspects that we've got going on in the chart of the United States. And I realized many years ago that the United States is a unique country. It's the only country that was formed on an idea.
Yes.
Every
Yes.
other country was formed because of tribal connections or cultural connections. This is the only
Geography.
country born from an idea. And it's like, there's an oversoul for the United States. I just don't believe that it can be destroyed completely. But when I see the aspects that are going on, there's a transiting Saturn, and the transiting Neptune is sitting now at the bottom of the United States chart. They both are moving into Aries. This is reevaluation. This is the shadow side of the United States coming up. This is anger, and we're also having a Chiron return. So all the racism now, the 1619 report, all these things are becoming more and more easily seen and learned about and recognized and felt to heal, because that's what the wounded healer does. We've also got the Uranus going into Gemini in July, which is going to form what we call a sextile to the Saturn and the Neptune. Sextile is, you put a little bit of effort into those two planetary energies and something good comes out. True. So Saturn and Uranus, Saturn is foundation, Uranus is innovation. I'm thinking we're going to get a chance to really rebuild and restructure and recreate a lot of the United States from the bottom on up.
Fascinating. So just to give a little extra insight there. So, of course, I'm a Neo-Vedic astrologer. So what in Vedic astrology, we look at the astronomical placements of the planets, as it were. So for us, it's 24 degrees back. However, irrespective of which system you use, guys, the ratio, the aspects between the planets are the same. A sextile is a sextile. An opposition is an opposition. A square is a square. The same in Vedic astrology and Western tropical. And one of the things what you've reminded me of there, of course, is this Saturn-Neptune combination. Wow. This is a big deal, folks. So there's these things called synodic cycles. I can't remember when, how often they meet. It's not that often, but Saturn and Neptune do meet as part of their cycle, and it's always a big deal. I think it's in around February next year. That's when they become exactly conjunct. In Western tropical astrology, it will be at 0 degrees of Aries, if I remember correctly, something like that, isn't it?
Right.
For Vedic, it will be in Pisces. However, it's still happening in that 4th house area. So like you said, Saturn is structure, but Neptune can also be what? Illusions and delusions. So I've been describing this as the big reality check. I feel like
big reality check, yes,
that America is having a huge reality check, particularly in things in the homeland, values, the seat of power. So what else do you see in terms of that Neptune-Saturn combination, the positives and maybe some of the shadow of how that could play out?
Well, I think some of the negatives are, Neptune rules organized religion, and Aries is very warlike and aggressive. And so I think we've been seeing in the last year or two some evidence of evangelicals in power changing laws to, get prayer in school and Bibles in classrooms and, just things like that are really unconstitutional. So I think that's that's one of the shadow sides of Neptune and Aries. And I think also there's disappointment with Neptune in Aries. There's a lot of disappointment. So hopefully it's not going to be on our side, the disappointment, but that the MAGAs might be disappointed because they're going to be able to push their agenda through only so far. I don't think they're going to be able to break through to completely take over the government, the culture, the United States democracy. This when you add that Uranus, because remember the United States Uranus is also in Gemini, so it's going to be a Uranus return. So
Yes.
truth is going to come out. There's going to be shocking revelations, and that together with that Neptune, I think that's going to help explode the lies, the illusions, and then of course when you compare that with the Saturn at the bottom of the chart, even if it's your own personal chart, is telling you have to find a new way to learn to be in your home. How do you relate to your family? When I had Saturn at the base of my chart was when my son's father left. And so it was like, okay, so we have to learn how to be a family without dad.
Yes.
And Saturn is usually, okay, we're remaking the foundation of the United States, basically. We're remaking the foundation of how we treat the indigenous people, of how we treat people of color, of how we treat everybody in the country. We're rebuilding that foundation. I think it's really ugly right now, and the storm isn't over, but I think we're going to have a small window of time where we can really do some good.
Wow. And that is fascinating because you will also know as well that Rahu is also part of this combination.
Okay.
And which is adding, so Rahu and Ketu, they essentially exaggerate things. But they say in Vedic, they say Ketu has the energy of Mars. So it can be a very intense, even sometimes violent energy. And Rahu can have the energy of Saturn, and Saturn is known as the planet of fear. But either way, whatever the nodes of the moon touch, they always become more extreme in some kind of way.
Okay.
And Rahu has this explosive quality. So when we think of that Saturn-Neptune combination, Rahu is also in that mix as well, kind of making it more bombastic, more outlandish, more over the top. I mean, we've seen some extraordinary things. Absolutely
just historic.
Extraordinary, isn't it? And I remember when I was making these predictions a while back, and particularly when I cast the Vedic chart for the inauguration chart, and I said, guys, I said, this government is going to do stuff that we have never, ever seen before. Because when I cast that chart for the Vedic, guess what? Uranus was in the first house in Aries, which is the bombastic sign. It's known as the immature sign. It's the baby of the zodiac. It can also be considered the embryo. Look at all of this stuff about birth and if people can have abortions or not, and Roe versus Wade, and all of this stuff. So we are going through this very discombobulated, extreme, outlandish energy. Now, in Vedic astrology, the nodes of the moon will be changing around about the end of May. So we may see a shift there. In Western, of course, they've just come into the nodes. But even though it's two different disciplines, they still kind of work. They will always mirror and echo each other, because it just the way things are playing out, like what you say with this Neptune Saturn combination in Aries, that also perfectly describes the times as well. So say, like, ending on a more positive note, and we've got 410 of you with us right now, so thank you so much. Much appreciated. So what do you see as the most positive outcome that could come from these tumultuous times?
Kind of a new United States, a way for us to reconnect to our ideals that are in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, which have their own energetic signature, very high energetic signature. I think there's a chance for us to reconnect to those things. And Aries, as you mentioned, is the baby sign, but it is a sign of youth. So I think there's, hopefully a movement among the young people to make the changes and not wait for the old people, not wait for the establishment. Say, no, this is the way we've always wanted it to be. And we see that we can do it and we're going to do it. Just get out of our way. And
Wow.
I don't think that's a bad thing.
Wow. Now, what you're describing there, because on my show last night, my Hogarth show last night, we talked about someone called David Hogg.
David Hogg, absolutely.
Like the way you described that energy, it made me think of him immediately. Mm-hmm. He's a young person. He's only 25. So right. He's very much within the age of Aries, because in Vedic astrology, we considered Mars most dominant from puberty up until about the age of 25. Okay. So he is at that age. And of course, he's like a young buck trying to come through and challenge the establishment. And we need more of that energy in politics. It's not that older people can't produce that energy. Of course they can, but we have seen for ourselves, haven't we? We're in a dire situation, a diabolical situation, and yet there doesn't seem to be that energetic pushback, isn't it? We have one or two younger voices, but when we think of the diabolical situation that we're in, it's incredibly quiet, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Which is one of the big disappointments, I think, that a lot of the Americans are feeling. Why aren't they doing anything about this? I'll take to the streets, but why aren't you guys in charge doing something about this? But I've been watching him since Parkland, the Parkland shooting, because I thought he struck me. And, he started the public speaking like right after the shooting with a young woman that they went together for a while. And then I don't know what happened to her. I don't know what she's up to now, but he's destined for something important. I really believe that.
Yeah. And I think he's there with the zeitgeist. And the way I see this combination playing out, because, the planets are multifaceted and complex, and they give their energies all at once. And we're in a way, we're like, I say to my clients, we're like antennae. And within us, so I say the planets produce their lowest to highest frequency simultaneously, but depending on our calibration is how much of that higher energy or not we produce. Yeah. So we are seeing the shadow. And of course, at the moment, Neptune, of course, deals with what? Illusions and delusions and disappointment, as you say, the unreal appearing real. We also have AI complicating that, and we have algorithms. Saturn, the shadow of Saturn, can talk about domination and control and being rigid. The old establishment trying to be rigid, not wanting to accommodate, the likes of David Hogg.
Well, yeah, I think they're trying to push him out.
They are. Yeah, they are. And this is a big mistake. This is a huge mistake.
I think
because the Democrats have, the GOP are so diabolical. These are easy wins. All you have to do is just repeat back what they've been doing. But on the positive side, what I love about the Neptune-Saturn combination is that one's ideals, one's highest dreams and aspirations can manifest and come true.
Yes.
When we apply a little bit of discipline, which is Saturn, discipline and logic and steadfastness to our highest aspirations and dreams, then we can truly manifest them. So that I look at as a potential positive as well.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. That's a really great way to see it, because Neptune on its highest level is our highest dreams and inspirations. And Saturn is the only way you can bring that down so that it's here. We can live with it. We can buy it. We can live with it, have it in our lives. So you need the Saturn to do that.
Indeed, to make it manifest. Well, Karin, can you believe it? We've already gone over an hour already. Went in a flash. It was a pleasure having you on my show.
It was thrilling for me to be here. I've been wanting to come on your show for a while. So this is really wonderful. You're so generous, Hogarth. I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure to have you here. And I want to give a little shout out to Susan Lynn, actually. Susan Lynn and I, we've not collaborated before,
Mhm.
but when Karin asked Susan Lynn said my name first. So that's much appreciated. So if you're watching, Susan, I really appreciate it. Maybe we should have a little collab. We should definitely do this again at
Oh,
some
great.
point, Karin.
Thank you very much.
I found it so interesting talking with you and your perspective. And it's so nice talking with other astrologers as well, particularly Western astrology, and we can compare notes. So
Mhm.
guys, if you've enjoyed this, we will definitely collaborate again in the future. Thank you
Yeah,
to
I
everyone.
still have more questions that I could ask you. So I'm like,
Indeed.
what about this and what about that? Yeah. So
Indeed.
I'd love to
Indeed.
come back. That would be great, Hogarth.
Perfect. And I'll finish with one closing statement here. Pet Jeremiah says, this is a real beautiful conversation. Thanks much, Hogarth, for this. It's giving us a lot of clarity. And thank you to Karin as well. So we will leave it there for now, but I'm sure I will have Karin back. So we'll probably chat a little bit more off stage. So you'll next see me. What's today? Oh, gosh, I'm not sure when you next see me. I'm going to be in Ibiza. I forgot to say I'm starting to work on teaching astrology retreats in Ibiza, actually. So
Oh,
when you
wow.
next see me, you probably see me from Ibiza, folks. But I will leave it there for now.
Wow.
And thanks again so much, Karin, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, cheers. All right, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Cheers.